There is something about the quiet hum of a dispatch center at 2 in the morning. The soft glow of screens, the distant murmur of other operators, the weight of knowing that any second someone's worst moment could come through your headset. I spent 7 years in that chair, answering calls, saving lives, staying calm when the world on the other end of the line was falling apart. I thought I knew every kind of emergency. I thought I knew my fiancée's voice better than anyone. Turns out I only knew the version she wanted me to hear. Before I tell you what happened that night, let me know where you are watching from. Drop your location in the comments. If this story speaks to you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. What would you do if you answered a call that shattered your entire future? Stay with me. My name is Riley. I was 32 years old when this happened, working as a 911 dispatcher in a mid-sized city in Ohio. 7 years on the job. 7 years of hearing car accidents, house fires, heart attacks, domestic disputes, and everything in between. I had talked people through CPR while their loved ones lay dying on the kitchen floor. I had stayed on the line with a teenager hiding in a closet while an intruder walked through her house. I had heard gunshots scream silence that was worse than screams. The job teaches you something most people never learn. It teaches you how to separate your emotions from the task at hand. When someone is dying and you are their only lifeline, you do not get to panic. You do not get to cry. You do the job, you save the life, and you process it later. I loved that work. I know that sounds strange, but I did. Every shift I knew I was making a difference. Every call that ended with paramedics arriving in time, every voice that calmed down because I stayed steady, every life that continued because I did my job right. That meant something to me. And then there was Megan. I met her 4 years before. Everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday afternoon, my day off, and I had stopped at a coffee shop near the dispatch center. She was sitting by the window with a book and a cup of tea, her dark brown hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. I noticed her scrubs first. Light blue, the kind nurses wear. She looked up when I walked in, and she smiled. Not at me specifically, just one of those smiles people give strangers when they accidentally make eye contact. But something about it stuck with me. I ordered my coffee and on impulse asked if the seat across from her was taken. She looked surprised but said no. We talked for 2 hours. She was a nurse at the regional hospital, 29 years old, originally from a small town about 50 miles south. She had moved to the city for work and stayed because she loved it. We talked about our jobs, about the weight of being responsible for people in their worst moments. She understood. Not many people do. When you tell someone you are a 911 dispatcher, they usually say something like, "Oh, that must be so stressful," and then change the subject. Megan asked questions. Real questions. She wanted to know what it felt like, how I coped, what kept me going. By the end of that conversation, I knew I wanted to see her again. We dated for 3 years before I proposed. It was a Saturday evening in late September on a quiet stretch of beach along Lake Erie. The sun was setting, painting the water in shades of orange and pink, and she was standing at the edge of the shore, letting the waves touch her bare feet. I got down on one knee, and she turned around, and her face went through about 15 different emotions in 3 seconds. She said yes. She cried. I cried. It was the happiest moment of my life. We bought a house together 6 months later. A small place, 2 bedrooms with a backyard that had a big maple tree in the corner. We talked about the wedding constantly. June, we decided. An outdoor ceremony, maybe 80 guests, nothing too extravagant. We would write our own vows. Her sister would be the maid of honor. My best friend Marcus would be my best man. Everything was falling into place. I thought I was the luckiest man alive. The first sign came about 6 months before the night that changed everything. Megan started picking up more night shifts at the hospital. She said they were short-staffed, that she was trying to help out, that the extra money would be nice for the wedding fund. I believed her. Why would I not? She was a dedicated nurse. Working extra hours was not unusual in her field. But then other things started to change. Small things, the kind you notice but convince yourself mean nothing. She started leaving her phone face down on the counter. She used to toss it anywhere, screen up, not caring if I saw her notifications. Now it was always face down or in her pocket or charging in the other room. When it buzzed during dinner, she would glance at it quickly and then put it away without responding. "Just work stuff," she would say. She started showering the moment she got home from her shifts, before she would come in collapse on the couch and tell me about her day. The difficult patients, the funny moments, the heartbreaking cases. Now she walked straight to the bathroom, and by the time she came out, she seemed too tired to talk. One night, I saw a text notification pop up on her phone while she was in the shower. It was from a number without a name saved, and it said, "Miss you already." My stomach dropped. But when she came out, I asked her about it, keeping my voice casual. She laughed and said it was probably from one of the new nurses, a woman named Sarah, who had gotten a little too attached during orientation. "She is kind of clingy," Megan said, rolling her eyes. "I will talk to her about boundaries." I wanted to believe her. So I did. Looking back, I can see how obvious it was. But when you love someone, when you have built a life with them, when you are 3 months away from marrying them, you do not want to see the cracks. You tell yourself stories. You fill in the gaps with explanations that let you keep believing. I was busy with my own work, pulling long shifts, dealing with the emotional weight of the job. It was easier to trust her than to question her. That was my mistake. The weeks leading up to that night were a slow unraveling that I refused to acknowledge. Megan forgot to wear her engagement ring to work one day. She said she had taken it off to wash her hands and left it by the sink. It happened again a week later. And again. Eventually, she stopped apologizing for it. The ring sat on her dresser more often than it sat on her finger. She stopped saying, "I love you," as often. It used to be how we ended every phone call, every text conversation, every morning before we left for work. Now it was just me saying it, and her responding with, "You too," or "same," or sometimes nothing at all. One evening, I came home early from a shift that had been cut short. I walked through the front door and heard her voice in the backyard laughing. I went to the kitchen window and looked out. She was pacing by the maple tree phone pressed to her ear, her whole body animated in a way I had not seen in months. She was happy, genuinely, brightly happy. And then she turned and saw me through the window, and her face changed instantly. She said something quick into the phone and hung up. "Who was that?" I asked when she came inside. "My mom," she said. "She was telling me about some drama with my aunt." But her mother never made Megan laugh like that, and her mother never made Megan's face flush the way it had flushed when she was talking on that phone. I tried. I really did. I bought her flowers on a random Wednesday. I made reservations at the Italian restaurant, where we had our first real date. I planned a whole evening, candles and wine and the promise of reconnecting. She canceled 2 hours before saying there was an emergency at the hospital, and she had to cover a shift. I sat alone at that restaurant for an hour before I finally left. The waiter looked at me with pity when he took away the untouched bread basket. I started losing sleep. I would lie awake at night listening to her breathe beside me, wondering if the woman I was going to marry was the same woman I had fallen in love with. My work suffered. I found myself distracted during calls, having to ask people to repeat information, losing my place in protocols I had memorized years ago. My supervisor pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay. I told him I was just tired. Then came the Saturday night shift that changed everything. I clocked in at 10 p.m., settling into my usual station with my headset and my coffee and the familiar glow of the dispatch screens. Megan had told me she was working overnight at the hospital. I had kissed her goodbye before I left, and she had barely looked up from her phone. The night was quiet. A few minor calls, a noise complaint, a fender bender with no injuries, someone reporting a suspicious person who turned out to be a teenager waiting for a ride. By 2 a.m, the dispatch center had settled into that strange calm that comes in the dead hours. At 2:23 a.m., my line rang. I answered the way I had answered thousands of times before. 911, what is your emergency? A woman was screaming. Hysterical, panicked, the kind of screaming that tells you something terrible has happened. In my 7 years, I had heard every kind of cry. But this one hit different. This one made my whole body go cold. Because I recognized the voice. It was Megan. My lover stopped breathing. She screamed. Please, he is not breathing. We were together, and he just collapsed. Oh God, please help me. My hands stopped moving. My heart stopped beating. For one eternal second, the entire world went silent except for her voice, the voice I had woken up next to for 4 years, screaming about her lover. Not her fiancé. Her lover. I do not know how I did what I did next. Training, I suppose. 7 years of conditioning my brain to function when everything else falls apart. My voice came out steady, professional, completely detached from the hurricane tearing through my chest. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. What is your location? She gave me an address, an apartment complex on the east side of town, a place I had never heard of, never had any reason to know existed. What is the patient's name and age? Derek, she gasped. Derek Simmons. He is 35. He is a doctor at the hospital. We were... She could not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Is he conscious? Is he breathing? No, I told you, he stopped breathing. I think it is his heart. He has a heart condition. Oh God, please send someone. I dispatched the ambulance. I typed the information into the system with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. I gave her CPR instructions, walking her through the chest compressions step by step. Place the heel of your hand on the center of his chest. Push hard about 2 inches deep. Keep a steady rhythm about 100 compressions per minute. I could hear her crying, hear the rhythmic thump of her hands against his chest, hear her pleading with him to wake up. You are doing great, I said. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me. I did not tell her who I was. She was too panicked to recognize my voice, and I was using my professional tone, the one stripped of all personality. The one designed to be a calm presence in chaos, not a person with feelings and a history and a heart that was currently shattering into 1,000 pieces. The ambulance arrived in 8 minutes. I heard the paramedics come through the door, heard Megan sobbing with relief, heard the controlled chaos of emergency medical care. Thank you, she said into the phone. Thank you so much. Help is there, I said. Take care. I disconnected the call. For a long moment, I just sat there. The screen in front of me blurred. The hum of the dispatch center faded to nothing. I was aware of my coworker at the next station glancing over, asking if I was okay. I nodded. I said I needed a break. I walked outside. The parking lot was empty and dark. The air was cold, that sharp Ohio cold that cuts right through you in the early morning hours. I stood under a flickering streetlight and looked up at the sky. No stars, just clouds, just darkness. I stood there for 15 minutes, not thinking, not feeling, just existing in the space between who I had been and who I was about to become. Then I went back inside and finished my shift. I clocked out at 6 a.m. and sat in my car for a long time before I started driving. Not home. I could not go home. Not yet. I drove to an empty parking lot behind a grocery store that would not open for another 2 hours and sat there as the sun came up. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan. Long night. Derek had a cardiac episode. So scary. Going to stay at the hospital for a while to make sure he is okay. Love you. I read it 3 times. She had texted me about the emergency. She had used the word love. She had not mentioned that Derek was her lover, that she had been with him when he collapsed, that she had called 911 screaming words that told me everything I needed to know. She was still lying, even now. Something shifted in me at that moment. The shock faded, and in its place came a clarity I had never felt before. Cold, calm, absolute. I was not going to cry. I was not going to beg. I was not going to ask for explanations or give her chances to lie again. I was going to leave. At 5:15 a.m., I called a moving company. One of those 24-hour services for people who need to relocate fast. I told them I needed a truck at my house at 7 a.m. The woman on the phone did not ask questions. She just took my credit card information and confirmed the booking. I drove home. The house was empty, just like I knew it would be. Megan was still with Derek, still at the hospital, still playing out whatever story she had constructed to keep me in the dark. The moving truck arrived at 7 on the dot. 2 guys in work gloves and company shirts. They did not ask why I was moving out so early on a Sunday morning. They just started carrying boxes. I moved through the house with mechanical efficiency. My clothes, my books, my laptop, the photo albums from my family, a few pieces of furniture I had owned before we moved in together. I left everything that was hers, everything that was ours. I did not want any of it. Before I left, I took off my own ring, the simple gold band we had picked out together, and I placed it on the kitchen counter next to hers. Then I found a piece of paper and wrote 4 words. I was the operator. No explanation, no accusations, no goodbye. I locked the door behind me and gave my key to the movers to slide through the mail slot when they were done. Marcus opened his apartment door at 8:30, still in his pajamas, clearly confused to see me standing there with a suitcase. I need a place to stay, I said. I will explain later. He stepped aside without a word. Couch is yours as long as you need. I dropped my bag in his living room, sat down on the couch, and for the first time since the call, I let myself feel it. Not cry, not scream, just feel. The weight of 4 years of love, the hope of a future we had planned together, the complete and total betrayal of everything I thought I knew. It hurt more than anything I had ever experienced on the job, and I had experienced a lot. My phone started buzzing around noon. Megan. First a call, which I ignored, then a text. Where are you? Why is your stuff gone? Another call, another text. Riley, please call me, we need to talk. Then about an hour later, the text that told me she had found my note. Oh God. Riley, please, let me explain. I turned off my phone. 3 days passed. I went to work. I took calls. I did my job. I slept on Marcus's couch and ate whatever he put in front of me and answered his questions with as few words as possible. He did not push. That is the thing about Marcus. He knows when to talk and when to just be there. On the fourth day, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and Megan was standing there. Her eyes were red and swollen. She had been crying probably for days. Part of me, a small part, buried deep beneath the hurt, wanted to reach out and comfort her. That is how deep the programming of love goes. Even when someone destroys you, your first instinct is still to care. "Riley," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, can we talk?" I stepped aside and let her in. Marcus was at work. We had the apartment to ourselves. She sat on the edge of the armchair, hands clasped in her lap, unable to meet my eyes. I sat on the couch and waited. "It was a mistake," she said. "Derek, it did not mean anything. I know that sounds terrible, but it is true. I love you, Riley. I have always loved you." "How long?" I asked. My voice was flat, detached, the same voice I used on calls. She hesitated. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year of lies. Half a year of fake night shifts and face-down phones and rings left on dressers. Half a year of looking me in the eye and telling me she loved me while she was with someone else. "You called 911 screaming about your lover," I said. "You did not even think about me. You did not even hesitate. You just said it. My lover. Not my friend. Not my coworker. My lover." "I was panicking," she said. "He stopped breathing. I thought he was going to die. I was not thinking about what I was saying." "No," I agreed. "You were not thinking about me at all. You have not been thinking about me for 6 months." She started crying again. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can postpone the wedding and take time to heal. Please, Riley, do not throw away 4 years because of one mistake." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman I had loved. This woman I had wanted to spend my life with. This woman who had stood on a beach with me and cried happy tears and said yes. "It was not one mistake," I said. "It was 6 months of choices. Every day you chose to lie to me. Every night you chose to be with him. Every time you looked at me and said you loved me, you chose to betray me. That is not a mistake. That is who you are. Riley, please. I spent 7 years training myself to stay calm when everything falls apart," I said. "I have talked people through the worst moments of their lives. I have heard people die on the phone. And through all of it, I kept it together because that is what the job requires. That night I answered your call, and I heard you screaming about your lover, and I still did my job. I dispatched the ambulance. I walked you through CPR. I saved his life. And then I went back to my desk and finished my shift." She was staring at me, tears streaming down her face. "I deserve someone who would never put me in that position," I said. "I deserve someone who loves me the way I loved you. And that person is not you." I stood up and walked to the door. I opened it and waited. She sat there for a moment, frozen. Then slowly she got up and walked toward me. At the doorway, she stopped. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I know," I said. "But sorry does not undo it." I closed the door gently behind her. Not a slam. Not a dramatic gesture. Just a quiet, final click. Through the window, I watched her stand in the hallway for a long time before she finally walked away. The first few weeks were the hardest. I kept hearing her voice in my head. Not the sweet voice from our good times, but the panicked screaming from that call. My lover stopped breathing. It played on repeat, especially at night, especially during quiet shifts when there were no emergencies to distract me. I thought about requesting a transfer. leaving dispatch, finding something else. But I realized that would be letting the pain win. I loved my job. I was good at my job. I was not going to let one terrible night take that away from me. My coworkers knew something had happened. Word spreads in a dispatch center. But nobody asked directly, and I appreciated that. They just covered shifts when I needed them covered and left coffee on my desk and treated me with the kind of quiet kindness that comes from people who understand what it means to carry heavy things. My father called me one evening about 2 weeks after I moved out. He is not a man of many words, never has been. But he said something that stuck with me. "Son, you did the right thing. Walking away from someone who does not value you takes more strength than staying ever could. I am proud of you." Marcus let me stay on his couch for 2 months before I found my own apartment. A small place, 1 bedroom, nothing fancy. But it was mine. A fresh start. I started running in the mornings. Not because I was trying to be healthy, but because I needed to move, needed to feel my body doing something, besides sitting in a chair and listening to emergencies. The rhythm of my feet on the pavement became a kind of meditation. Step by step, breath by breath, I ran through the pain until it started to fade. I saw a counselor. The department offers mental health services, and I finally took advantage of them. I talked about the call, about Megan, about the strange experience of saving a man's life while discovering my fiancée's affair. The counselor helped me understand that I could feel hurt and still be proud of how I handled it. The two were not mutually exclusive. 6 months later, I moved into that new apartment. I bought a plant, a small fern, because someone told me taking care of something alive helps with healing. I do not know if it is true, but the fern is still alive, so maybe I am doing something right. I still work as a 911 dispatcher. I still answer calls. I still save lives. The job did not change. I changed. I do not hate Megan. I thought I would, but I do not. Hating someone takes energy, and I would rather spend that energy on building a life I am proud of. What happened was painful, but it was also clarifying. I learned what I am capable of. I learned that I can face the worst moment of my life and still function. I learned that walking away is not weakness. Sometimes it is the bravest thing you can do. Some calls change your life. That night I answered a call that ended my engagement, but saved my future. If I had never heard the truth, I would have married someone who did not love me the way I deserved. I would have built a life on a foundation of lies. The pain of that night saved me from a lifetime of something worse. I still think about her sometimes. Not with anger, not with longing, just with a kind of sad acceptance. She made her choices. I made mine. Our paths went in different directions, and that is okay. Staying calm is not about having no emotions. It is about choosing which emotions get to control you. I could have begged. I could have fought. I could have fallen apart. Instead, I did what I was trained to do. I assessed the situation. I made a decision. And I moved forward. Sometimes the worst night shift becomes the first step toward a better life. I still take 911 calls. I still save lives. The only difference is now I know I can save my own too. If life called you with an emergency you never expected, would you have the strength to answer and still move forward? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had a moment that shattered everything you believed, only to realize later it was actually setting you free? Share your story below. If this touched you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories from real life. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Sometimes the right story at the right time can make all the difference. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and thank you for being here. Take care of yourselves. And remember, no matter what call life throws at you, you have the strength to answer it.